If your tomato plants are turning yellow from the bottom up, getting strange brown spots, or rotting on the vine just when they should be ripening, you are not alone. Every summer, millions of American gardeners watch their tomato plants get sick, and most of them rush to the garden store to buy expensive sprays, powders, and treatments. But here is something the big garden brands will never tell you. 3 of the most common tomato diseases in America can be fought with a trick that costs less than $2. No fancy chemicals, no special equipment, just a simple barrier that interrupts the way these diseases spread. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to protect your tomatoes using research that comes straight from universities like Cornell, Penn State, Ohio State, Rutgers, and the United States Department of Agriculture. By the end, you will understand the 3 biggest tomato killers, how they actually move through your garden, and the cheap
Papa,
science-backed method most beginners never learn. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about the 3 diseases we are dealing with. The first is called early blight, caused by a fungus with the scientific name Alternaria solani. Early blight starts on the oldest, lowest leaves of your tomato plant. You will see small brown spots that grow into a unique bullseye pattern, with rings inside the spot and a yellow halo around the edge. The leaves turn yellow, then brown, then die, and the disease climbs higher up the plant, week by week. Researchers at North Carolina State University have estimated that in severe seasons, early blight can wipe out up to 79% of the tomato harvest. That is not a typo, 79%. The second disease is Septoria leaf spot, caused by Septoria lycopersicae. This one is often confused with early blight, but the spots are smaller, only about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch across, with grey or tan centers and dark brown borders. If you look closely with a magnifying glass, you will see tiny black dots inside each spot. Those black dots are not dirt. They are the fungus's spore-producing structures, called pycnidia, and they are firing new spores every time it rains. Septoria moves fast. Once a spore lands on a wet leaf, it takes only about 5 days for new spots to appear. So the spots you see today were caused by a rain event almost a week ago. By the time you react, the disease is already several steps ahead of you. The third disease is anthracnose, caused by Colototrichum coccodes. This one is sneaky because it does not attack the leaves. The plant can look completely healthy, lush green, no spots at all. But then your beautiful ripe tomatoes start developing small, sunken, circular depressions in the skin. Sometimes you will see a salmon pink color inside the lesion, or dark concentric rings. That is anthracnose. And here is the part that surprises most American gardeners. According to a long-term Cornell University field study, anthracnose spores can survive in your soil for up to 8 years. Researchers buried infected debris and tested it year after year. After 8 full years, 90% of the buried spores were still viable, still capable of infecting tomatoes. So if you had anthracnose 3 or 4 years ago and you are planting in the same spot, the fungus is almost certainly still down there, waiting. Now here is the key question. What do all 3 of these diseases have in common? They all start at the bottom of the plant. They all overwinter in the soil or in plant debris on the soil. And they all spread the same way, by splashing. This is the part most gardeners never understand. When a raindrop hits bare soil, it does not just make a puddle. Studies by researchers at Rothamsted Research in the United Kingdom used high-speed cameras to measure exactly what happens. A single raindrop hitting the ground releases dozens of smaller droplets, and those droplets can shoot straight up into the air. In still conditions, splash droplets carrying fungal spores can travel up to 70 centimeters vertically. That is more than 2 feet, straight up from the ground. Your lowest tomato leaves sit well inside that splash zone. But here is what makes the problem worse. Each individual splash only carries spores about 15 centimeters at a time. So how do spores reach leaves that are 3 or 4 feet off the ground? They climb the plant in stages. One rainstorm produces hundreds of splash events. Spores get pushed onto the lowest leaves, then the next storm splashes them higher, then higher again. This is called the splash ladder, and it is how a disease that lives in the soil ends up at the top of your tomato plant by the end of summer. There is also a hidden mechanism most plant pathologists rarely talk about. A 2019 study using ultra-high-speed photography revealed that when a raindrop hits a leaf, it creates a tiny air vortex, a swirling ring of air that lifts dry spores up and into the wind. So a hard rain does not just splash spores onto your plant, it can launch them into the breeze, carrying them to your other tomato plants, your neighbor's tomato plants, even your peppers and eggplants. Now here is where the $2 trick comes in. If splash is the main way these three diseases spread, then stopping the splash stops the disease. And to stop the splash, all you need is a physical barrier between the soil and the lowest leaves of your tomato plant. This is not my opinion. This is backed by published agricultural research. A peer-reviewed study published in the journal Hort Science tested whether a layer of dead winter rye and hairy vetch left on the soil could reduce septoria leaf spot in commercial tomato fields. The result was clear. Plots covered by that mulch layer showed a significant delay in septoria development compared to bare soil. In a later review, researchers reported that the same cover crop mulch, combined with weekly fungicide, produced significantly lower disease progress and higher marketable yields than fungicide alone. In other words, the mulch beat the chemicals by themselves. Even earlier, a famous series of experiments by Dr. Lawrence Madden and his team at Ohio State University used rain simulators to test how different ground covers affected splash dispersal. They tested bare soil, sand, straw, and plastic mulch. The result? When raindrops hit a rough surface like straw or mulch, the mass of splash droplets reflected upward dropped to as low as 2 to 9% of what bare soil produced. That means a simple layer of mulch can absorb more than 90% of the splash energy that would otherwise launch spores onto your plants. So what should you actually use? Almost anything that covers the soil works, and most of it is free or close to it. Straw is the gold standard. A 2 to 4 inch layer of clean straw forms a soft, rough barrier that catches raindrops and stops their bounce. Shredded leaves from last fall work just as well, and they cost nothing. Grass clippings from your lawn, as long as you have not sprayed weed killer on it, are excellent. Cardboard sheets, especially plain brown cardboard with the tape removed, make a fantastic barrier and slowly break down over the season to feed your soil. Newspaper, layered 4 or 5 sheets deep and covered with a little straw to hold it in place, also works beautifully. If you want to spend a little more, red plastic mulch is a fascinating option. Most American gardeners do not know that red plastic mulch was not invented by a garden company. It was developed by United States Department of Agriculture plant physiologist Dr. Michael Kasperbauer and Clemson University researchers in the 1990s. Their studies showed that tomatoes grown on red plastic produced up to 20% more fruit than tomatoes on black plastic because the reflected red light signals the plant to grow taller and produce more fruit. Penn State University confirmed those results in field trials, but here is a critical warning that the gardening influencer crowd usually skips. The University of Wisconsin Extension specifically cautions against overmulching. Their guidance is to use about 1 inch of high-quality dense mulch. Too thick a layer of dense, wet organic material can actually hold moisture against the soil and raise humidity inside the plant canopy, which is exactly what these fungi want. So with loose materials like straw, 2 to 4 inches is right. With compost or finely shredded material, keep it thinner, around 1 to 2 inches. Here is the next step that most beginners get wrong. Even with a perfect mulch layer, you should still prune the lowest leaves of your tomato plant. The reason is simple. Even a small splash can still reach a leaf that is touching the ground. The University of Maryland Extension recommends removing the lowest 3 to 4 leaf branches once the plant is established and starting to set fruit. The University of Florida's IFAS program is even more specific. They recommend stripping all leaves on the lower 12 to 16 inches of the stem, but do not get carried away. A 2024 study published in the journal Horticulture found that removing more than about 47% of a tomato plant's leaves caused a 17% drop in fruit yield. So strip the bottom 12 to 16 inches and then stop there. The leaves above that point are doing important work, feeding your fruit. Here is another tip that almost no one mentions. The West Virginia University Extension warns that wooden tomato stakes and metal cages, reused from previous years, can carry fungal spores from the last season's infected plants. Their recommendation is to soak stakes and cages in a 10% bleach solution for 30 minutes before reusing them. Most home gardeners pull last year's cages out of the garage and pop them right back into the soil. If you had any disease at all last year, you are reintroducing it on day one. Watering is the next piece. The University of Minnesota Extension's research on early blight is very specific. Spores need free water on the leaf surface to germinate, and the leaf must stay wet for 5 to 10 hours for infection to take hold. This is why watering matters so much. If you water your tomatoes in the evening with an overhead sprinkler, the leaves stay wet for 10 to 12 hours overnight. That is the perfect infection window. If you water in the morning at the base of the plant, the leaves either never get wet or dry within an hour or two in the sun. Same water, completely different disease outcome. Drip irrigation, soaker hoses, or just careful hand watering at the base of each plant are all far superior to overhead sprinklers. Now let's talk about the variety of tomatoes you grow, because this is something the big seed brands will never highlight. There are disease-resistant tomato cultivars available right now, but they are not the famous names you see on every seed packet. The Utah State University Extension specifically recommends Mountain Supreme, Mountain Fresh, Plum Dandy, Mountain Magic, Defiant PHR, Iron Lady, Jasper, Juliet, and Verona. These are bred for resistance to early blight. Look for the letters E and B on the seed packet. Defiant PHR and Iron Lady are also bred to resist late blight, which is a related and even faster moving disease. Here is one more piece most people miss. These diseases do not just live in your tomato plants. The Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station reports that anthracnose has a host range of 68 different plants. Common weeds like nightshade, horse nettle, Jimson weed, and ground cherry can all silently harbor the same fungus that ruins your tomatoes. So weeding the perimeter of your garden is not just for looks. You are removing an army of disease reservoirs. Let's also clear up a common myth. Some people believe that once disease shows up, the plant is done. That is not always true. Septoria leaf spot, for example, rarely kills the plant outright. It defoliates the bottom leaves, but if you remove those infected leaves quickly and prevent further splash, the plant can continue producing fruit. The University of Wisconsin Plant Disease Diagnostics Clinic notes that Septoria can devastate tomatoes if uncontrolled, but with early intervention, plants often survive and recover their harvest. So let's put this all together into a simple action plan you can use this week. Step 1. Look at your tomato plants right now. Are the lowest leaves yellowing or spotted? Carefully remove those leaves and throw them in the trash, not the compost, unless you compost hot enough to exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Wash your hands and tools afterward, because spores travel on skin and metal. Step 2. Strip the lowest 12 to 16 inches of foliage from every tomato plant, even if it looks healthy. This removes the splash zone target. Step 3. Lay down your barrier. 2 to 4 inches of straw, shredded leaves or grass clippings is ideal. If you only have cardboard or newspaper, that works too. Cover the entire soil surface around each plant, all the way out to the drip line. Step 4. Switch your watering method. Water at the base, never on the leaves, and water in the morning so any moisture dries before evening. Step 5. If you reuse tomato cages or stakes, bleach them. 10% bleach, 30 minutes, then rinse and let them dry in the sun. Step 6. Pull any nightshade or related weeds near your tomato bed. These are silent disease carriers. Step 7. Next year, plant a resistant variety. Look for the EB code on seed packets, or specifically ask for Iron Lady, Defiant, or Mountain Magic. Here is the truth that the big garden brands will not put on their packaging. The vast majority of common tomato diseases in American backyards are not solved by chemicals. They are solved by interrupting the splash cycle, drying the leaves, and removing the sources of infection. A bale of straw costs about $4 to $6 and covers multiple plants. Shredded leaves and cardboard cost nothing. Compared to a single bottle of fungicide which can easily run $15 to $25, the math is obvious. This is not magic. If your plant is already dead, no mulch is going to bring it back. But if you catch the symptoms early, or if you start using these methods at the beginning of the season as prevention, the science is overwhelming. You can dramatically slow down all three of the most common tomato diseases, save your harvest, and protect the rest of your garden, all for less than the price of a cup of coffee. If this video helped you understand your tomatoes better, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more research-backed gardening tips, and drop a comment telling me which disease you have been fighting in your garden this year. I read every comment and I will do my best to help. Thanks for watching and good luck out there.